Quick show of hands, who's first time at CannaGather? Good job, Gene. Brought a lot of new people in the back, good stuff, thank you so much. One new person right there, he didn't raise his hand, that's okay, I forgive you. Show of hands, who's been here before? Nice, thank you all for coming back. Round of applause for everyone who raised their hand. Some people do raise their hand. You don't get a round of applause because, it's literally the participation award of CannaGather. So now down to something that's more interesting. Who's an entrepreneur in this room? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. That is what I like to see. A lot of amazing entrepreneurs in this room. Good on you. And who's an investor in this room that's willing to raise their hand and admit that they're an investor? Because most of the time when I do this, people say that they're not. Okay, so now you split. Because when Troy came from ArcView, Troy was like, because when I do this, all the investors keep their hands down. And I'm looking into the audience, they keep their hands down except for Gene. So thank you. We got a reluctant investor over there. Thank you. Just called you out. Sorry. But and then Troy comes and is show of hands, who here is an ArcView member? And straight up 25 people raise their hands. And I'm what? That's a subset of this question. So feel free to raise your hands. You're probably going to get hit up for money afterwards, but that's sort of the point. So this is sort of a breakdown of what the math comes out to. Not actually, you've been here before, so you know that. But this is approximately what it is. We've got a little disclaimer there in case SEC or FINRA comes after me. But this is approximately what it comes down to. It's a little investor joke for the 3 people that raised their hand. It's mostly entrepreneurs, people that are interested in the industry, want to break into the industry, or already are in the industry doing some things that are just starting out, and then people that happen to be in New York and run publicly traded companies. So I don't see you in the audience, but you just walked in. So thank you for coming to CannaGather and welcome. 20% about our investors, people who are either actively deploying capital in the cannabis industry or are in private equity, in venture capital, hedge funds, banking, what have you, retail investors. They're looking to get more involved in the industry or to see what's up. And then a mix of a bunch of other folks, service providers, real estate, accounting, lawyers, a huge mix, media services, branding, health and wellness. We have a lot of doctors, particularly today, and not just doctors, but there's practitioners and other folks involved in the healthcare world, and obviously some folks very involved in the advocacy and media world. So take a minute. This is a little less dynamic than Galvanize because it's a little more random at Galvanize, and I see a lot of pumping. But if you don't know the person next to you, talk to that person and learn what they're up to, and you'll hear from me after that. If I can get you guys to quiet down, I'll be excited. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. So last month we had Dr. Eric Hollander. For those of you who were not there, why were you not there? He's the head of autism at Montefiore. We talked about CBEV and some of the cannabinoid pharmacological research that he's doing. If you're interested, you should check it out at CannaGather.com/August 2019. You can get a subscription to all of the VOD work that we've put together over the past couple of years for free. So if that doesn't entice you, please tell me what does, because I can't go any lower. So it's awesome. The video's on there. And actually, I have one more thing. I'll throw in a congresswoman. We had Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who is my congresswoman, who I think is the congresswoman for this building, but I'm not sure. So I need to check it. It might be Nadler. You guys? I think it's Nadler. It's Nadler. Okay, so Nadler. Well, we'll all talk to him in December, but we'll get to that in a second. So Congresswoman Maloney, she's my Congress member. She's a co-sponsor of the Safe Banking Act. We talked about Safe Banking Act, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about later, continuing conversations that we had earlier. And then she's on the Financial Services Committee, which is relevant because that's what Safe Banking is going through. And she's awesome. So be sure to check that out. CannaGather.com/August 2019. That was the last one. A couple hosts. We're going to scratch one of them, Donna Glasgow. Her mom's not here, but I forgive her. She's my babysitter, and it's her birthday today. So let's give her a round of applause to Donna. came all the way from Trinidad just for CannaGather. But not. She mostly came because of her son is going to school here. So. Welcome to New York. And then we have Daniel coming from the bottom, and Gillis Cohn. So round of applause to our attendees. The host committee brings some of their friends. You bring 3 friends. You get a shout out. You get some goodies. Now that I think about it, I don't think that we were particularly well organized on that tonight. So if you're listening and you're on this list, then talk to me, and we will hook you up with some. I believe it's coconut oil. Some hemp-infused coconut oil from Jenny's Baked at Home. So hit me up. And yeah, you come host committee next month. Quick shout out. This obviously can't be done by me alone. My mom can attest to that. I can accomplish very little on my own. So, quick. That wasn't a joke. I mean, it's funny, but it's not. So, quick round of applause, or long round of applause, however long you'd like to clap for everyone on the CannaGather team. Thank you all so much. Thank you all. And then before we get started, there's a typo, great. OCD already kicking in. So join us at Ribalta. So I don't know if you've been to Ribalta, but they have really amazing truffle gnocchi. And they're going to give us some free pizzas tonight. So come grab some drinks. We actually have the venue until 10. Usually we have the venue until 9 at Galvanize, so we can stick around here until 10. And then afterwards we have free pizzas. And non-free drinks at Ribalta, but I hear the drinks are good, so the food's definitely good, so I encourage you to join me there. And then buy your tickets to our next event. It's going to be here, October 22nd. We have State Senator Liz Kruger. Liz Kruger, as you may know, is awesome. She is the champion for, one of the champions, but one of the few champions. Not to say that there isn't a lot of support, but she's one of the few true champions of cannabis legalization in New York State. She is my state senator. She is the chair of the finance committee, and I'm pretty sure I'm talking about a slide that's about to happen, but we'll find out soon. Quick shout out to our sponsors. Obviously can't do this without them. Cole Shop, so it's always different person who's coming through, but I guess Rob's coming up. So Rob, you want to come up? We got an alarm going. Let's see.
Amber Alert.
What is that? In Suffolk County. Does anyone live in Suffolk? So if you live in Suffolk, please answer your phone. And then after the Amber crisis has been resolved, please talk to me. This applies to people in Nassau as well. Pretty much anyone on that island, we should talk, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. So,
How are we doing this now?
I don't know. We've never done this before. I'm really good first.
Okay.
I don't know.
We do this. I feel like it's less of a commitment.
I don't know.
I can come up. It's not that small, so you stand? I'll stand here.
Or you can sit. Come on.
Yeah, we'll stand, because I'm not going to be up here too long. So my name's Rob DePisa. If you haven't met me before, I'm the co-chair of the Cannabis Law Group at Cold Shots. We've been a long-time sponsor of CannaGather, which is an incredible event. Please stop by our booth, come introduce yourself, because today's all about meeting people and it's all about community. And please remember, it's important to keep this in mind. This cannabis community, there are no competition here. There's plenty of opportunities. There's going to be plenty of licenses. Don't ever view this as competition, but more so as community. So be here, meet as many people as you can, and try to help each other. And that's probably the best advice I can give. Get as many business cards as you can while you're here, and make those connections that are going to help your business or your goal to get where you want to be. But thanks for coming tonight. Thanks again for Josh putting on a great event. Thanks.
Has been very supportive of us, not just in New York, but also in our New Jersey market, which is currently on pause. If you know anyone that wants to help out in New Jersey, we could use the help. So let me know. ArtView, Gene Sullivan, you want to come on up? Okay. That's okay. You can take it up back. Gene Sullivan. That's your official title, right?
Josh. I am Jean Sullivan. The best credential I can give you is that I have been a long-time venture capital investor, all tech, but 5.5 years ago, I got into the cannabis industry and I am all in on cannabis. It's laughable that if you're in that long, you're actually considered a pioneer, which I think is very funny. And so I have also tirelessly worked for the ArcView Group. We convene 5 really fabulous events a year, and our next one is around the corner, and the first time for a Manhattan event, October 2nd through 4th. So we seek serious investors to come join us. I have a little card, and I'll stick around after the meeting, so come and see me if you want to join us. It's a group of members. You don't have to join as a member, but there is a guest fee if you want to come to the first one. And we want to see you there. We want a diverse audience. We want women investors. We want women business owners. And we're seeking great companies, too, to apply, to pitch on our stage. Now, New York is locked down for that part of it, but Vegas is next. So if you have a company, we want you to go online and apply. I'm on that selection committee. It's really, we've just become bigger and better than ever. And there's a lot of us who really go just because we enjoy being together, seeing great companies. ArcView has put more than $250 million to work as a membership in every company you can think of in this business. So I vet hundreds of companies over the last several years. I'm standing up a number of investment platforms for our member audience. So stand by, you'll hear from a lot more. And then I'm thrilled even at the next event, you're gonna also hear Adam Goers, he's on our stage. And yesterday I was at a conference and Bruce Linton spoke, who's an incredible former CEO of Canopy Growth. So there we go again with that noise. And so it's fun to meet the thought leaders. So please join us and thank you for that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Jean was sort of a venture capitalist. She sort of co-founded a venture fund of like 400 million. Jean is one of the pioneers of not just the cannabis world, but the tech community in New York State as a whole. So I'll compliment her if she won't compliment herself. So some news going on. Lots of news. Wow. Does anyone read? It's very scary. All this stuff about vaping. Do you know that 7 people died? Wow. 7. I also read a study from Colorado that, like, have you heard of alcohol and DUIs? Wow, statistics are crazy. So vaping, in all seriousness, be careful when it comes to product quality. And I think one of the things that you're going to hear folks say is, oh my God, there's all this vaping and the deaths that are coming, the 7, hopefully not 8, in all seriousness, but hopefully not 8, but the 7, but you know, we should get rid of this vaping. We should get rid of this cannabis, even though 3 of them are cannabis and 3 of them are nicotine. They're not going to say, let's get rid of nicotine. I mean, hopefully they do, but they're not. So the real point there is, why are we pushing all of this stuff underground and not legalizing it? We're actually creating more problems by making it illegal. And so I'm sure there's going to be a chorus of people that say that we shouldn't legalize because of these 7 deaths. And maybe they should look at statistics, and maybe they should realize the implications of what prohibition has done, which resulted in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in jail, and makes people less safe. So, vaping. Safe banking, for those of you who don't know, is sort of what seems like the industry's best chance of getting some legislation passed in this Senate environment with Republicans in control. What it does is it hopefully enables banking. So as you may know, if you're already in the industry, banking is a major challenge. If you're not in the industry, banking is a major challenge. Now you know. And safe banking helps to work to support the enablement of financial services to cannabis companies. And so it seems like a vote is imminent in the House. There was a report that said that CRAPO, who runs the governing body on the Senate, the committee on the Senate side, is keen to get it going. My feedback from someone who's a deputy to someone on the committee is less excited than the press report is. So I'd say Senate is mixed, and that's really going to be where the challenge is. So what we really need to see out of the safe banking vote, should it happen in the House side, so we need actually a lot of Republican support. And should there be a lot of Republican support, that'll send a message to the senators, the Senate side, which I think has a third of the Senate is now co-sponsoring. I could be wrong on that. But there's more substantial support on the Senate side. And so that's sort of what's going on there. Another question mark that's been thrown into the mix is the GPA and the ACLU and a few other advocacy organizations are challenging safe banking and saying, hey, let's hold off on this until Congressman Nadler's bill, which we'll talk about in a second, comes into effect. And that's more of a holistic change. So what Congressman Nadler is looking to address is more descheduling, not just rescheduling, but descheduling, taking it off the Controlled Substances Act and not making cannabis illegal, which is great, which is awesome. The Safe Banking Act is arguably more of an intermittent step. So there's some controversy that happened, I think, this morning. I'm still trying to flesh out my views on it, and I feel like we're generally favorable when it comes to activism and social equity. I like to think that safe banking does offer social equity because most of the people who are in the industry and are in this room and have banking access are not those social equity applicants, and it's the social equity applicants that are being denied licensure because they don't have banks. But it's complicated. It'll be interesting to see what happens. The CBD ban. So as some of you may know, you can't drink your CBD, you can't eat your CBD anymore. No surprise for anyone who follows federal legalization, but for the most part, it's been a bit of a gray area, thanks to our governor's very big support of hemp. Thank you, Governor Cuomo, for that. Unfortunately, New York City, and then that's the DOH-NH, and then the DOH at the state level, we're like, wait, this is actually not legal. We shouldn't allow this. And they're going to push that underground too by banning it, and that takes effect October 1st, and hopefully we'll have some folks to share their views on that next month. But we'll definitely have Sarah Lowe's-Kruger, and she has some views on that, so I look forward to that. And edibles, not a ban, but it's supposed to happen starting October 1st, so that's pretty cool for all you Canadians in the room. I don't know if there's anyone. Are there Canadians in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Congratulations. One person. I used to play hockey. No, I'm too old. Long Island. So I was dead serious. Actually, that's a really horrible word to use. I was very serious before when I said, if you're in Suffolk, if you're in Nassau, Long Island is really going to be the battleground for winning hearts and minds in the goal of having cannabis legalized in New York State. It's actually probably not, according to statistics, probably not actually the people of Long Island as much as it is the state senators of Long Island who think that their constituents don't support it. So it's sort of complicated. But anyway, if you live in Long Island, or if you're from Long Island, if you literally know anyone in Long Island, and you're interested in, is anyone interested in legal cannabis in New York State? So if you're interested in that, and you know literally anyone in Long Island, please come talk to me about stuff. Some more sponsors, MGO and LO. They are CannaGather's accountants. Not only are they accountants, they do all sorts of other stuff. They're like a full service professional services firm. They do so many things, I'm not even going to go into it. But if you check out MGO on the accounting side and LO on the professional services side, they're awesome. Check them out. Thank you for your support. Wilson Elser, full service law firm. We're working on potentially working on an interesting project together. They are very excited about cannabis law. They're a global practice. So if you're interested in the world of law, we have some great lawyers at your service, or hopefully at your service. We would As I said, as Rob said, Cole Shots and Wilson Elser. So you can't go wrong. Two the best firms, not just in the industry, but in general. And I can promise you, for anyone who knows me, many lawyers are not the best. I'm sorry to all the lawyers in the room, but you sort of knew that. So Wilson Elser and Cole Shots, check them out. PKF O'Connor Davies, they're my personal accountants. So if you're looking for accountants in the same way that you're looking for lawyers, we have two great service providers here, PKF O'Connor Davies, for all your accounting needs and advisors. And INCBA, also known as the Cannabis Bar Association, is Chris here, all the way from California. You want to come on up, Chris? Over here. Chris here. And I think I might have said this to him the first time that we met, was that, I wasn't a huge fan of lawyers, but he's actually a pretty decent dude. So Chris, thank you for your support, and thanks for coming out. Yeah. Tell us about INCBA.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Ian has spoken at a couple of our events in the past, and actually is going to speak at one of our events that's just coming up around the corner. The International Cannabis Bar Association is an association of lawyers. We have about 650 members across the United States and the world. We primarily act as a networking group and educational group for lawyers. Primarily what I want to talk about tonight is an event that we have coming up. It's just 2 weeks from tomorrow. It's a 3-day event. It overlaps just a little bit with the ARC Fruit group, unfortunately, but we have managed to steal Gene for the evening of Friday. So we do see some way for those two things to fit together. We have 3 days of crash course and education for lawyers. And so that first day is an International Law Day. It's something that we have not seen really widely addressed in the industry before. We're addressing the UN Single Convention on Narcotics, domestic regulatory regimes that are outside of the United States, and a lot of the cross-border issues that we're starting to see coming up. So everything from moving product to moving money, and then licensing intellectual property. So sort of laying the groundwork for international growth. We are addressing international law specifically, and actually earlier this year we went through an evolution to the International Cannabis Bar Association from the National Cannabis Bar Association, specifically because we see in the future the fall of the federal prohibition. When that does happen, we do see a globalized market, and so we want to start creating the network for lawyers to help your businesses grow across borders when that does happen. We also have 2 additional days that sort of mirror what we've done in the past for this Cannabis Law Institute. Those 2 days, we have a set of plenary sessions, and then we have 2 tracks. For lawyers, we cover everything from financing for growth to drafting to litigation. We are addressing the hemp and the CBD industry and what's going on with the federal government there. And so it's really just a crash course in everything that you need to know as a lawyer. For all the lawyers in the room, we really, really hope to see you there. It's a sophisticated set of education that we really see as unparalleled in the industry. So to the extent that you guys are interested in learning more about the legal side of things, we really do encourage you to come up, talk to me, get to know a little bit more about the Bar Association and join, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple weeks. And I think it is October 3rd through 5th, so that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's at the New York Law School, so it's actually just a little ways away, a little further down south in Tribeca. It's a beautiful venue. We have everything from networking events to this, like I said, crash course in education. We have roundtable topics, really every flavor of education that you could want. And then we do just have an all-star cast of speakers. We have the general counsels from some of the largest companies in cannabis. We have the head regulators from New York, Connecticut, and Rhode Island coming to speak. We have some of the leading attorneys from across the country, and so we really do hope to see you there. And if you have any questions, please come chat with me after the event, and thank you again, Josh.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, man. Good to see you. All the way from California. So if you are a lawyer and you are not billing $1,000 an hour on those days, then you should go to the conference. And if you are billing $1,000 an hour, you should subcontract it and then go to the conference and have someone else do the work, because obviously that would be more fun. So a couple more sponsors, and then we'll get into things. BDS Analytics, if you're looking for data, particularly about what's being sold when it comes to brands and products, obviously on the West Coast mostly, California, Colorado, Washington mostly. BDS Analytics, all sorts of white papers, all sorts of information. Be sure to subscribe, check them out. Some of the white papers are free actually, so BDS Analytics is your source there. Archer
Archer is a full-service law firm who's been supportive not just in New York, but also our events in Philadelphia. So thank you so much, Bill Caruso. I don't know if you're here, but Bill Caruso was a champion of legalization in New Jersey since, I believe, 2009, but I could be wrong. A long time. So thank you, Bill, for your work there and your support of us. Hello Convo, as I mentioned, we have 11,000 Instagram followers, which makes my mom very excited because she's not on Facebook, fortunately, but she's very active on Instagram. Hello Convo helped us do that. Splash is our ticketing platform. Tress Capital, if you're looking for not just venture financing, but also help in terms of incubating your company, getting it off the ground. David Hess is a great guy. Unfortunately, he's at Hall of Flowers right now, but Tress Capital, happy to make the introduction. I think Asher from the team is here somewhere. No, maybe, probably. Maybe he's getting drinks. And Herba Verde Group. So Herba Verde Group, they are cultivating in, I believe it's North Carolina and a couple other places, but they have an event as well next Tuesday, the C3 Summit. You want to check it out. Canopy is going to be there. Acreage is going to be there. I'm going to be there. It's going to be at the Union League Club. Am I doing a good pitch? I'm getting some nods of approval. So Herba Verde Group, doing some cultivation, pretty substantial in size, not the biggest in the world, but pretty much mid-size grow. But also, I want to give a plug for their event. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah, thanks for having me there. So thank you guys. Thank you to all of our sponsors. In case tonight isn't enough, you can go to DC and have another medically focused event. I believe it's Brody went to Baltimore on Thursday, came up here for CannaGather in New York, and is going to DC tomorrow. So round of applause for you for going to 3 CannaGathers in 1 week. That's awesome. Great to meet you. And then you can see what we're doing across the country. It's not always updated, but as you can see, we have a great event with Green Bits coming up in California, in Los Angeles. OC will be announced soon. Baltimore really strong, and Colorado is going to come back. As those of you who know, last month we had Congressman Perlmutter in Denver. Congressman Perlmutter is the lead sponsor of the Safe Banking Act. So that was really cool. It's like kind of surreal, but we're doing it. So yay! So yeah, make sure to go to CannaGather.com, check it out, and tell all of your friends, because we have like 300 seats, maybe like 200 seats available. So let's get some more people out here. And as I said, next month we have State Senator Liz Krueger. She's awesome, chair of the Senate Finance Committee. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's pretty cool. She's like a hero of the industry, particularly in New York State. So, what's the date? Doesn't say it on there. Good question. It's October 22nd. It's a wow. We need to change these slides. Thank you. Free ticket. I don't see you, but yeah, yes, nice orange tie. I'll remember. Yeah, it's October 22nd. It's going to be here. It's going to be awesome. Probably. So yeah, you should come. And if you get your tickets now until Monday, you get $5 off. So we're going to get started. Take out your phone. It's the polite thing to do. Why? So that you can take a picture. You can write a blog post. Apparently TikTok is like the thing that the kids are doing nowadays. Do we have any new school students that snuck in here? It's really disappointing. You guys got to beef up your entrepreneurship program. But we can help you with that. So apparently TikTok is what kids are doing nowadays. And whatever your social media platform of choice is, make sure to take some pictures, some video, maybe a VR experience, and share what we're doing with CannaGather so that people come. And so without further ado, Doctors for Cannabis, little congressional testimony with Dr. David Nathan. You want to come on up? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I want to give a disclosure. He went to Princeton. Please don't hold it against him.
Yeah.
It's
Never
really
left.
a psychologically challenging place, and we try our best.
Didn't used to be.
Well, now it is.
Now
So,
it is.
I was trying to give you some
Great
cover.
deflation.
I was trying to give you some cover.
No, I graduated in 1990. It was easy back then. Yeah. They made it hard before you got there.
Just me then. Just me.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
don't judge me then.
Yeah.
Too late for that. So, I know who you are. You've spoken at one of our events before, but many of the people in this crowd do not. So, who are you?
I am David Nathan, I think. I have ID, but I'm David Nathan. I am originally from Philadelphia. I got my undergrad degree at Princeton and did my medical school in Philly, and then did my residency up in Boston, where I met my lovely wife, who happily came with me, which I really appreciate. So thank you. I also want to give a shout out to Tanya Adams, one of the spokespeople for the organization that I'm going to talk about. I guess people already know her. Great. Yes, Dr. Tanya Adams, who actually spoke on DFCR's behalf a few times, including on a news show in New York City that I remember watching, so that was great. You crushed it. So I am a psychiatrist, and you might wonder, what's a psychiatrist doing here? Oh, he must be an addictionologist. No, I'm not actually. My specialty is bipolar and psychotic disorders, which actually has come to be something of an advantage, because I can speak to one of the controversial issues about cannabis legalization, which is the potential for inducing psychosis in vulnerable individuals, which I'm happy to talk about. So I am somebody who is a history and science wonk, and I've written on a variety of topics over the years. And one of them in 2009, 2010 was an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal about the wisdom of legalization. And I actually back then, tell you how little I knew about it, other than the obvious rightness of the cause. I kind of mixed up the terms decriminalization and legalization. I didn't understand there was actually a difference, because it kind of sounds the same. But that article, I figured I was just adding my name to the many doctors who have come out and spoke in favor of this issue. And I assume there must be many doctors, because most of my friends who are doctors say that absolutely this drug should not be against the law. And so that's the article I wrote. Wall Street Journal fortunately picked it up, and I got my 15 minutes of fame that then led to a lot of requests for speaking engagements on behalf of other drug policy organizations like the Drug Policy Alliance and MPP, Marijuana Policy Project. And in 2014, I was asked to join the coalition of the NAACP, the ACLU, and other New Jersey organizations that were looking to legalize adult use cannabis in New Jersey. And I'll tell you the path, both chronologically as well as in its character, has been similar for New Jersey and New York, and I'm still not sure who's going to come out and be first to the market on that one. But when that coalition got started in 2014, I was going to represent the doctors, and I was going to get all my friends to sign on, and we were going to, speak with one united voice, and only to figure out that none of my doctor friends wanted to get their name on record about this, and it was very disappointing. So I knew that there were doctors out there who would be willing to say something. And so I looked for the national organization that would represent us and that I could hook up with, and figured out, surprisingly, there was none. There was no organization of physicians, a national organization, that actually supported legalization. Zero. The closest we had was the California Medical Association had endorsed legalization in 2011, but now in 2014, it was time to start organizing. And so, after weeks of doing Google searches and scratching my head and talking to my wife about how there's got to be this organization, never found it, and decided, okay, took a deep breath and said, okay, let's make an organization. So fast forward, and in 2016, we launched with 50-some prominent doctors from around the country, including former Surgeon General Joycelyn Elders, who's one of my personal heroes, and she has been very active in the organization, actually, as an honorary board member. We also have Andrew Weil. We have the former clinical head of SAMHSA. A lot of former people in positions, because when you are in the organized medicine world, you consider cannabis to be a political third rail, and it still is. And actually, this last Sunday, I was at a dinner with some of the prominent physicians in New Jersey, and speaking to the head of the main medical organization in New Jersey, which I will not name out of courtesy to him, and because I do want to talk to him rather than talk at him. So if this gets back to him, give me a call. You know, he was saying that, yes, we issued a white paper against legalization, but we don't take a position on criminalization. And to which I responded, you know, basically bullshit. You do, because you are saying that this drug should be against the law, despite all of the harm that that the prohibition has done, despite the fact that the prohibition is so much worse than the drug itself. And I kept his feet to the fire and made sure that he understood that there is nothing that limits people's access to health care so much as poverty. And there are few systems in this country that has created more poverty than the war on drugs. And so that's what I'm in it for. That's why, you know, a country doctor in Princeton, thank you. That's what got me into it. It's a real passion because, you know, as I've said in many forums, including testimonies at state legislatures around the country, this is the wrong drug. This is not a close call. You know, Oprah says things I know for sure. Well, one of the things I know for sure is that regardless of what regulation should look like, this drug should not be against the law. Now we can talk about details. Yeah. And so Doctors for Cannabis Regulation launched with our Declaration of Principles that you can see right here. It is available online at dfcr.org. We also have our, this is a fixed document that now is hopefully the stuff of history. We have our Declaration of Principles, our platform of regulations, which is a dynamic document that we change based on internal discussions and feedback from doctors and other stakeholders around the country. There are 7 points here. The first 3 of them are the public health issues, the obvious things about oversight of production and testing, distribution and sales, labeling, proper labeling, targeted prevention of non-medical underage use, and then that's the first 3. The last 4 are about social justice issues, including taxation of the adult use cannabis industry to fund equity programs for communities disproportionately harmed by the drug war. You might be familiar with some of the demographics that are involved with that. Protected rights for limited home cultivation, which unfortunately has been a non-starter in New Jersey, and I believe it is also here in New York. No home grow.
I don't think it's public, but I don't think it's like a secret that some of the conversation has been around potentially staggering.
Yeah, okay.
But not ruling it out entirely.
Okay. Yeah. And I can talk about, you know, if we get to it, I'm happy to talk about the dynamics of that conversation in New Jersey and why it is that my organization, despite one of our 7 principles not being met, still supported the Senate bill S2702 that did not include home cultivation, but we supported it anyway. We also support expungement and resentencing for all cannabis arrests, charges, and convictions. And of course, the last and perhaps most important point is ensuring diversity in the industry. You know, it is not enough to say that we are going to legalize this and now communities of color are going to be fine, because this could be yet another industry that people who come from modest means will be shut out of. And so I think it's a great thing that the sentiment around the country and one of the key issues to get cannabis legalization passed around the country has been ensuring that there is some diversity in the industry. And I know that is a hot topic here in New York as well. And it's a process that actually DFCR has been involved in. We have 2 states, I believe, where we have an actual state campaign committee, and New York is one of them. Tanya Adams, of course, is involved in that. And the chair of that that committee in DFCR is Dr. Julia Arnsten. Do any show of hands people know who she is? A remarkable woman. She is a professor in 3 different departments at Albert Einstein Medical School, medicine, psychiatry, and epidemiology, which is a very qualifying department for her. She's also the chair of medicine, or at least she was, I believe she still is, at Montefiore Hospital, and created the first cannabis clinic in the country for indigent individuals, and got 4 or 5 physicians to work with her on that. She's also done some research in the field looking at, for example, and I had a conversation with one of you out there about this today, how people who are leaving rec dispensaries in legalized states are happy to share with you the medical conditions for which they're using cannabis. And so when people say that, you know, they're really, it's all just an end run, or the medical thing's just sort of a, you know, a Trojan horse for legalization. Well, you know, legalization is supported by all the medical cannabis organizations, and that is because of the degree to which it does improve patient access. So we're, of course, about patient access, but the real man bites dog story about DFCR, and the reason that we've been fortunate to get a lot of public notice, is the fact that we are a bunch of doctors who are saying, yes, this drug can be harmful in certain circumstances, but by no means should it be against the law, that there is no question that slightly superior to prohibition is decriminalization. Way superior to both of those options is legalization and regulation. And we know this because what's happening now with this vaping issue and the illnesses you're seeing have been with unregulated products. And we even heard the former head of the FDA just recently say that, you know, don't want to legalize it, but we might need to regulate it. And that's good news, because if they don't realize that you have to legalize it to regulate it, that's fine. Just call it regulation.
And if he wants to speak at CannaGather and not charge us what he has to charge us, we would love to have you.
I think that was Scott Gottlieb, if he is...
I won't share how much. I was like, what? I mean, he probably deserves it for certain companies, but we don't have the money. So.
But you got me instead.
Oh, this is just
I work cheap.
Like, yeah, we had a deal. We had a deal.
That's right. That's right.
Grandfathered in from.
And it was actually at High NY, which is an organization.
I don't know if we're legally allowed to say that name anymore.
No, we're not. Okay. In that case,
yeah.
we were with an organization from which CannaGather grew, and we.
It's a more complicated, sinister story, but he knows it and I know it. So
you
we
were
don't have to
there,
talk
right?
about it.
And so we will say we launched at your event in 2016 with the publication of our Declaration of Principles, and we had some of the most prominent cannabis doctors in the country, including Dr. Julie Holland, who's right here in New York City, author of the Pot Book, and we had Sue Sisley, who has been one of the strongest members, board members, and now honorary board members of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, and she's still making history. And I can talk a little bit about what we're doing other than testifying all over the place.
Sure. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Sisley's work, definitely check it out because she's awesome. She lives in Arizona, but she comes to New York once in a while. I think she's coming in November, so I need to follow up with her. But she's awesome. Definitely take a look at her work. Definitely, I think you know, there's definitely a lot of overlap in terms of like the social equity, legalization stuff that I want to chat about with Adam. So this is like a perfect setup. And then at a high level, definitely share with us like what you guys do at DFCR. And then you know, you had a very unique experience. So as mentioned, like he testified in front of Congress. And I was just finding out, like, not just as a viewer in the live stream, but like, you know, hearing it from you, what your experience was like was very eye-opening. So I think like that is a very fascinating experience that I think everyone wants to hear about.
Sure, absolutely. that experience was second only to our NFL campaign, which is the only thing that you guys might not know about that we're doing. You know, we're organized with NFL players, and you know, when it comes to the media, they open the door and let us come through with them, and so they've given us a lot of airtime. Second only to that, in terms of media attention, has been the testimony we've given in many states and now in the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee that had its first ever cannabis legalization hearing a couple months ago in July, and it was organized by Chairman Jerry Nadler. Who, if you get him here, that'll be fantastic.
The plan is tentatively in December.
Wow.
Congressman Nadler and State Senator Savino will be our speakers.
He's the man. I mean, he's the one really making this happen. Took about a year to get that hearing to happen, and there were 4 of us who testified, and it was a great opportunity for Marilyn Mosby, who is the state attorney for Maryland, Neil Levine, who is the head of the Cannabis Trade Federation, and Dr. Malik Burnett, who is a former board member of DFCR and, of course, a well-known and really powerful advocate for legalization, social justice, and public health. And so at this hearing, you know, we got our 5 minutes to say what we needed to say, which is all the things you might imagine that I would say. And then it was very interesting to hear what the questions were. You know, a lot of them were, of course, softball questions, because it really, there's a real sense of bipartisan support. And I think it was not around the MORE Act that Chairman Nadler is sponsoring, which, you know, that's an uphill climb to get that through. And I understand policy organizations, as you were saying, are holding off support of the Safe Banking Act until we can see what we can do with that. Well, I personally and DFCR officially has endorsed the Safe Banking Act as a necessary intermediate step. You know, anything we can do to chip away at the prohibition and also to make the industry safer. You know, carrying around bags of cash is not necessarily the way to go. Of course, we also want to see the end of 280E, and if you guys don't know what that is, talk to Ms. Sullivan right here. She'll give you an earful about that. And by the way, thank you to ArcView for having supported DFCR in the past, and we'd certainly appreciate your help going forward as well. I guess the one hostile question that I got that was right out of the talking points of smart approaches to marijuana, people familiar with Kevin Sabet's work against legalization?
So Smart Approaches to Marijuana is the leading disinformation campaigner when it comes
ironically
to cannabis.
Smart Approaches to Marijuana.
Yeah, they actively distort statistics to create basically the modern incarnation of reefer madness. Fortunately, they've actually flipped a couple state legislators in New York State who were on the fence about cannabis legalization because they pushed them to actually do their diligence and get involved in the statistics because of their attempted shock and awe campaign. And then when they actually did the diligence, they were like, oh, you guys were lying to us. That's pretty messed up. And now they support cannabis. And I don't want to say which state senator it is, but thank you, Kevin Sabet, for helping with legalization in New York State.
Yeah. Fair enough. But not to say that they did make a dent here, and I think that's important to point out.
They definitely do.
Right. And what they did was they went upstate. And they talked to people in the rural areas of New York, and this gets into the details that is beyond the scope of this discussion. But the tension between trying to ensure good social justice provisions and getting a bill that's going to pass. And, you know, a tricky thing, for example, is that in the rural areas of New York, it's a very hard sell to say that a percentage of the state sales should go to areas disproportionately affected by the drug war, because that's in the cities, and there are poor folks in the country, and so it's just not as simple as directing those funds. I'm not saying that I know a simple answer to that, but it's something to think about. And when it comes to home cultivation, then there's another thing that, is this the hill to die on? You know, we have a character, a great guy in New Jersey that many of you may know, probably personally, because he really gets around, is Leo Bridgewater. Great guy, one of the key people in Minorities for Medical Marijuana, which, along with the Minority Cannabis Business Association, two great organizations trying to make a difference for communities of color in the industry. Leo, when I asked him about his support for the bill, said, you know, I just want him to stop arresting my friends. He said, at this point, I'm ready to support it because, you know, we can't let perfection be the enemy of the good. And so we all have to be mindful that there's going to be a tension. And I suppose it's one of those situations that if it's done properly, nobody will be happy. But what is most necessary is that we get this done so that the people of New York can see that, guess what? The sky doesn't fall when adult legalization happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm the only one snapping because I'm talking to state senators and they're like, the sky's gonna fall, the sky's gonna fall. And I'm like, I don't know, Colorado's still there. I definitely appreciate where they're coming from because it's a scary thing. And I think that the social equity stuff is very, very important and it's necessary. I think it's less of the obstacle to legalization than it is this consistent disinformation from the past 70 years that people like Sam have been doing in terms of making people think that if you legalize, the sky is going to fall, which we all know it is not, because if sky falling and cannabis consumption were correlated, let alone causation, like the sky would have fallen a long time ago in New York, and it's still up there somewhere. It's dark, so I can't see it. But
I'd love to hear what Adam has to say on this and other issues, but that's something I'd like to kind of tip you guys off on as you're going out there and talking to your friends about the merits of policy change, is that what organizations like Smart Approaches to Marijuana is doing is that they are finding the problems in each of the legalized states. And there are problems, you know, not surprisingly, every state has had stumbles in the process of legalization. You know, beats the heck out of mass incarceration, I would argue. But each of the states, you can find something. The persistence of the illegal market in Colorado, the oversupply in the Pacific Northwest, and the negative consequences of that. You can find that. But most of what Smart Approaches to Marijuana will tell you about is issues that are not related to legalization or regulation, but rather the lack of regulation. When there have been lapses in the regulation, that's what they're actually picking on. And so when you hear them say, this happens and that happens, and you know, there were 100,000 edibles recalled in the state of Colorado in 1 year. And I'm thinking, yeah, I guess it was probably a lot of one or two products, you know, it was probably those kind of numbers. That was products, not numbers of recalls. But there have been recalls, and you know what? Awesome. That is great news, because that means they're actually regulating the industry for, you know, finally. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to share with them. The last thing that I'll leave you with is when you hear Smart Approaches to Marijuana say that, you know, in Colorado or in, you know, in California, cannabis users, all their fingers fall off or something like that. Where they're getting that data from is mainly one source, which is the Rocky Mountain High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, Rocky Mountain HIDA. And so if you're ever up against somebody who is quoting these statistics, ask them where it came from, because I bet you somewhere between 30 and 60% chance it's from this one organization that is a group under the DEA, and their sole mission is to prevent the spread of so-called illicit drugs, and that means they are by their mandate, required to oppose legalization. So your tax dollars at work, folks, and make your opinions known on that. So I really appreciate, with industry here, I appreciate the fact that you guys are supporting advocacy. Of course, we're making it possible for you guys to be in business. And so I do want to make a pitch and say, if it's at all possible for people here to support organizations like my own, we work almost entirely on volunteers, and any donation, the bigger the better, will really help keep our doors open, because we are out there, we're working hard, we're not getting paid, and we are really relying on you guys to make it possible. So thank you very much.
Round of applause, Dr. David Nathan. Thanks, Matt. Are you going to stick around a little bit afterwards for questions? Amazing. Great. And I think, a key point there is when it comes to disagreements with folks who are against legalization, a lot of them cite medical points that don't come from a source that's a doctor. But he's a doctor. He does this. And so do his colleagues. And they support cannabis. So thank you for doing the research and showing that legalization is the right way. And speaking of medical cannabis, none other, keynote sponsor, Mr. Adam Goers. Thank you from the MCIA. Nice to meet you finally in person.
Again.
Exactly. So, welcome to CannaGather.
Hello, everybody.
So, I know who you are, and everyone reading this knows who you are, but, what is the New York Medical Cannabis Industry Association? And I know that you have slides, if you want me to switch to that.
We have a little slide presentation. Thank you to Paul on our team who prepared that for us. Yeah, let's start it off.
Switch chairs, maybe?
Yeah, I guess actually we should. Well, first of all, Adam Goers, it's great to be with you. Thank you for doing these. I can't believe this is the first one I've been to, but I know a lot of people that come, a lot of colleagues of mine and friends, and it's really great to have a nexus like this for people to get together and to learn. Dr. Nathan, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. We really appreciate it. Science is what we need more of. We also need more entrepreneurs, and appreciate the lawyers and the accountants and the investors that are really making this happen. And there's so much to do. So really excited to be with you. So again, myself, I chair the New York Medical Cannabis Industry Association, which is a group of 7 of the registered organizations here in the state who are providing medical cannabis. And we've been around for a couple of years now, and a lot of the things that we're working on are things that the good doctors working on. A lot of the policy measures that we're going to talk about tonight are really important. Primarily, the thing that you're going to hear from me tonight is the efforts that New York State needs to do to improve access and to make sure that we have a medical component in adult use legislation. So I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Great. So did you want to chat about maybe your personal experience, or do you want to jump right into the slides, walk through?
Yeah, why don't we go through this and let's see how much time that we have. Again, a nice little slide here of the different companies that are a part of the association. A couple are represented here in the crowd, or were at the reception earlier, so hopefully you'll get a chance to speak with some of my colleagues. I think everybody here primarily, how many folks here, just by show of hands, feel like they know a lot about the New York medical cannabis market? Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. That's a problem. And so here, obviously, just a quick graphic of kind of how you can actually get registered, which is important. And we're going to talk about the low registration rates here. Obviously, you need to be a New Yorker to be able to get a card. You need to be eligible, i.e. a registered physician that has deemed that you can find benefit from cannabis medicine. And then you need to go through a state process, actually pay a fee, et cetera, to be able to get a card. And then you'll finally be able to visit one of the only 40 dispensaries in the state, which I think is something really key that we'll talk about in a little bit. And the conditions, one of the interesting things, New York didn't have chronic pain as one of the conditions, and then about, I don't know what it's been, maybe about a year and a half ago, that changed, and it obviously opened up the floodgates of a lot of people that have been needing a outlet to, seek relief. So we've been really pleased with that, but there's a lot of other things that we can do on this area, primarily allowing a doctor to recommend medical cannabis for any condition that they see fit. Doctor, the federal government, state government doesn't tell you when you can prescribe certain medicines to certain people for which conditions. And so I think we're seeing a lot of movement in a number of different states that recognize that we need to put physicians in the front of care. So we're heartened that the governor and the legislature agree with us on that position. But the problem is that we're still here 2 years after they say that they agree with that, and patients aren't able to get access. So a very major issue. One of the things that makes New York uniquely great, and also I'll get to the point where it's a challenge for patients, is the type of products that we're producing here. As opposed to if you went out to California and their medical cannabis program, or even into Massachusetts, or down to Pennsylvania, the difference is that New York requires essentially pharmaceutical quality products and delivery formats that you would find behind the pharmacy aisle. So if you went into a Columbia Care dispensary, which is the company I actually am an executive with, you will find a licensed pharmacist in a white lab coat who will be reviewing your recommendation and will be talking to you about which type of product is going to be most beneficial for you. So it's super, super medically focused. And ultimately what that's also meant, though, is that the type of products that a lot of people are more familiar with, which maybe is dried flower, or maybe even edibles, are not available in this program. And so that stopped, a lot of people from being able to get relief. And certainly, groups that we've spent a lot of time with are veterans advocacy groups. And something I've learned to know is that a lot of veterans with PTSD actually find a lot of social outlet by actually sharing a joint with veterans and talking about their issues. And that's a real situation, and that those veterans are not able to access essentially the medicines that they're looking for. And one of the other areas that I think is really important when we talk about product format too is cost. And so it's been really great that New York has kind of set the bar of what the top level of medical cannabis can be. The problem too has been cost. And certainly, if anybody here been in there and realized kind of what the pricing is, and the state actually approves the amount that we can charge for it. So it's a very kind of government-run system, and we think, and we say when we think too, we know that the governor and the legislature agree with us on a lot of this. The problem is that we need action, because agreeing on it hasn't led to anything. There are still low numbers of patients that are registered in the state, and we'll talk about that in a second again. The other one is access. Does anyone know, like, show of hands, actually, like, have you ever walked by a medical cannabis dispensary in the state of New York? Okay. But that's maybe, what is that, a third?
And these are people who are at a cannabis industry.
Yeah, and you don't even know where a medical cannabis dispensary is.
Exactly.
That's a problem. There is one for every 500,000 New Yorkers. How many CVS's are like, I think I have like 5 CVS's on the corner of my block.
600,000
right?
for every 500.
Yes, everywhere. And
they used to have CBD.
And that's right. They did. So, I mean, I guess the thing here, we've heard sometimes some of the legislators and policymakers have actually questioned whether or not there is a problem of access. And I'll tell you, if there were 40 CVS's within drugstores, not just CVS's, then within all of New York, how often would you seek out pharmaceutical drugs that your doctor is prescribing to you? You wouldn't. There's an access problem.
People are much less excited to go to pick up pharmaceutical drugs than
Yes.
medical cannabis.
Well,
I would think.
that's true. I will say so too, though. One of the interesting things, and I encourage you for the health of the industry, and also for your options of making sure that you're getting quality tested product. If you have a medical condition, please do go seek out a recommending physician. Do go to one of our dispensaries. I think you'll learn a lot. You're going to find the products available are certainly more expensive than what folks are finding on the illicit market. But they're the best in the country. One of the things that you'll see when you go into one of those dispensaries too, which may be different than what you've experienced when you've been out in Denver or been in another medical or recreational state, is the demographics of the patients. Our average patient in a Columbia Care facility is a 57-year-old woman in New York, and she's sick. Walkers, wheelchairs. So a lot of the things that we're working on too as an association is also the fact that average 57-year-old woman that's coming in there has a choice of either going to prescription drugs, which maybe she's getting for a $5 copay, or maybe it's somebody that's been injured on the job and has gotten an opioid prescription and has got a $5 copay. The smart folks are going and they're spending a significant amount of money. They're having trouble with access, but they're going because they're getting great relief.
Why are they choosing cannabis? Because especially for people of that age, as we've discussed, they've been subject to this disinformation for decades. So when you say that, I'm like, it sort of makes sense, but it's also like, wow, like that's pretty cool and pretty crazy. Like, how is this 57-year-old woman being like, yeah, I'm going to go to Columbia Care, Acreage, or
Sure.
one of the participating?
Well, I think again, it's the real medical focus of the program has actually made it so that I think there's a lot more enthusiastic kind of medical providers in the space, and so I think that shows that again, the average age 57-year-old means that they're getting more traditional medical advice. They haven't kind of come to this perhaps as like in Colorado, where you would say maybe in their medical cannabis program the average age was probably, or the demographic was and I'm just being a little flippant here, a 30-year-old male with chronic pain, right?
Chronic pain.
And we kind of joke about that, but I think as the doctor mentioned before too, one of the big things that we recognize, that we're going to talk a little bit about this as it relates to adult use, is there's so much medical promise within adult use too. So maybe that 30-year-old that's coming in with chronic pain is actually, has anxiety issues, or maybe he does have some type of, an onset of, pain that is best kind of treated with medical cannabis. So as much as I made a little bit of joke, I really do think, and we do know from the research, that the vast majority of people that are seeking adult use cannabis are actually seeking it for a medical or a health and wellness reason.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking with someone at Washington Square Park a couple of days ago, and we were handing out CannaGather business cards, being like, "Hey, come," and he was like, "Can I get some weed there?" And I was like, "No, sorry, common misconception." But he was serious, because he was like, "No, I have this throat problem, and I've had this throat problem for 3 years, and I'm looking for medical cannabis." And I was like, "Well, I'm not a medical professional, but it sounds like chronic pain, so I don't know, maybe you can try." But there are these people that need, and they don't necessarily know how to get involved. And I guess it sounds like what you were saying is that the doctors and the nurse practitioners have come around. But I guess even there's been obstacles, because some of the doctors, they don't necessarily want to participate in the system.
That's right.
Because
they don't want their name on the list.
Somewhat, I mean, you know better than me. Why are what are the reasons why doctors don't want to participate in this program?
Well, I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge across the country. I mean, a lot of healthcare outlets are actually telling their physicians that they cannot do it.
For insurance reasons or liability reasons, or the fact that it's illegal?
I'm sure that it would be fun to, Doc, come take a chair up here. We could talk about this one, but it's for a variety of issues. But I think one, this isn't how we do it here. Is that kind of what Yeah, it's that establishment. I mean, we also hear, the doctors that you get in discussions with who say, "Oh, but there isn't research, and until there's more research, I can't possibly do it." And we can actually point to strong anecdotal and observational research. I'll even point out one that's involved with Columbia Care, with Columbia University, that they've done a observational data set looking at our patients that are neuropathic pain patients, which are traditionally folks that have. As a person who suffers from neuropathic pain, I can tell you it doesn't go away. And opioids are not an effective treatment for it, but it's probably one deemed traditionally one of the only treatment options for it. So folks that are taking tons of opioids but are not well served by it. So that subsect of 88 patients that were high opioid consumers who started using our pharmaceutical quality tablet, cannabis tablet, 64% of them saw a total or significant decrease in their consumption of opioids. Think of it. Yeah, thank you. I mean, so what's so exciting about that is that we actually got a NIDA grant. And NIDA usually only grants based on federal law, like things that basically can show that drugs are bad. So this was really promising. But what there is enough research out there that these physicians need to take their head out of the sand, and policymakers in some places, folks in Congress. I mean, we could draw up a long list, I'm sure, here over drinks later of all the people that need to take their head out of the sand on the issue of cannabis, but that's one of them.
Speaking of the opioid crisis, Purdue Pharmaceuticals unfortunately filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's a bittersweet victory because I heard that the Sackler family took all their money into offshore Swiss bank accounts.
Yeah.
So that kind of sucks, but hopefully we're seeing the end of this sort of destructive freak capitalism to infect people with opioids. So
well, and to that point too. I mean, I was talking about it earlier, the copay issue. But again, for the low price of a $5 copay at the Walgreens or at the pharmacy and the Walmart, there's this perpetual addiction going on with these opioids. And again, at the same time, people are spending a lot of money out of pocket to take real pharmaceutical quality cannabis products because they know it's an alternative. And so one of the things that we're doing as an association here in New York, but also companies across the country, is advocating for reimbursement. We've seen some advancement in Grace Summers here, talk to him later, has been working on this issue with a number of us for a while now. But workers' comp in New York, we're very excited, have started, and we're trying to work with them on the framework of it so that if you are injured on the job, you can actually seek out medical cannabis as opposed to a traditional form of treatment and be reimbursed for it. So that's really exciting. Let me get back to this because as an industry association, you might hear something here that you're surprised, which is we want new companies in this business here in New York. We need new companies.
Tell us more.
We need new companies. We need new registered organizations to be able to serve patients. This is not working. And we think that we've been calling on the state to issue new registered organization licenses for a year and a half now. And we've been also saying that the state should be looking to diverse entrepreneurs to come fill those roles. There are a lot, and we know a lot of African American, Latino, South Asian, and other that are interested in getting into this business. And so we're very supportive of that, and we hope that in the room here there's some registered organizations to come because there's a lot of work to do. We need to get this number down. And I think my next slide here is the one that's going to really kind of put it here, which is, where are other states on medical cannabis? Take a look at this. I guess we forgot to put Florida in here, which I think is a really important one. Florida's had a medical cannabis program going for a little over a year now, and New York's has been many years beyond that. And Florida now has 3% of their population is now registered for medical cannabis. New York's is, I think it's 0.56%. 0.56, and it's like dropping. And those are like the registered patients. And then we know that just because you're registered doesn't mean you're actually using, using these medicinal options. So I guess what we're really looking here is there are people that are getting a lot of relief. Oklahoma just opened up like 8 months ago, and they're darn near 4% of their population is registered. And so we look at this as a situation, I think, if somebody that's a public health official would point to this as, evidence of medicine not getting to people who we know need it. And so this is why we need more registered organizations in New York. We need you all to be proselytizers too, because a lot of your family and friends are maybe using an opioid, and maybe you should be telling them they should go see a physician and talk to them about a natural alternative that's whole plant, that's made to pharmaceutical standards. So we're really excited to continue working with the state, with the governor's office, with the legislature to make sure that this program expands. But what happens after that? Have you heard anything? Adult use, maybe?
So I have so many questions from the past, 5 years of doing this. And then, as you're talking, there's more and more, and I also want to leave time for Q&A.
Sure.
So, I think that from the advocacy world, when you're talking about the MCIA and the member organizations, it's like some people view it as the bad guys, as these are the big businesses that are here to make all the money. And then when I was speaking with some of those people in Washington Square Park, I was like, well, actually, it's not like they're making money hand over fist. I actually feel like we're going to learn a lot about what can be improved. And there's sort of multiple questions within that. It's not black and white that just because you might be a well-funded company that naturally you're going to make a lot of money, and by the same token that as Rob was saying, that it's not a zero-sum game. That there needs to be more people in the market. So one question is, how do the medical companies compete with what I assume is the illicit market that's taking up a lot of that market share?
Well, number one, to the illicit market side, I think we know for public health reasons, first and foremost, for criminal justice reasons, we need to bring normalization to this in New York. We need to do it across the country. As we've seen now, with the vaporization crisis, and you're talking about it earlier, it's associated with, all the evidence that we've seen thus far is that it's associated with illicit, vape cartridges. And so, I think that's one where, we've been working closely with the Department of Health and with the governor's office and have been following and have been helpful as much as we can in what they're trying to do and investigate this. But you heard the governor, last week in his press conference. One, he said, the medical cannabis program, that's safe. And then the next, he said, to anyone else that's vaporizing anything that you don't know where you're getting it from, whether it's illegal or not, stop doing it. And so I think that's important advice. To the measure of kind of who we are and what we do. Columbia Care is a New York company. We got started in Washington D.C. 7 years ago with one dispensary, and our two co-founders were hammering things into the wall, and we've grown. And I think that we've grown because we do a good job. And I know many of our other members of our association have similar stories like that too. We got into this to change people's lives. We make a pediatric suppository to pharmaceutical standards, not because we have to, but because we know that there's treatment options, there's people that need it. I kind of go that far to kind of just say, I know the motives of the people that are in this industry are to try to improve people's lives, change criminal justice. That's why I think we're spending so much time, energy, dollars, and efforts to, lobby on the side of, social equity for, in adult use, making sure that there's economic opportunity for all, making sure that this industry is diverse. So I think those are things that we're all working on.
So I guess, I'd also love to know, what, if you could wave a magic wand, how would you fix the medical program? But that's probably a multi-hour conversation.
Well, so magic wand makes that conversation easy.
I guess so. But I guess jumping right into the adult use side, there's sort of two facets. Again, going back to my point, where people are these big companies is well, where are you going to get the supply from in terms of scale if you don't have companies that are operating at scale.
Sure.
And then the other side is the social equity is how do you ensure that there's an opportunity for, and you have a slide for it, I guess. So it's both, what do you envision for the role of the existing ROs in adult use and the adult use landscape more broadly, and likewise in terms of social equity and how is that juxtaposed when you have big companies that are publicly traded with entrepreneurs in this room that haven't started yet?
Yeah. I mean, we have, I think, 90 employees in New York. So to some, that's pretty big. To others, that's not very big at all. And so I guess in that sense, we're, a company that's growing and is hoping to grow, and employee ownership of the company and good paying jobs. We are organized, or labor peace agreement with 1199 SEIU. We pay a living wage in all of the different states that we operate in, a minimum of $15 an hour. Some places where the minimum wage is half of that. So I guess just meaning to say, I think we're trying to live up as a company, as an industry, to kind of what was Google's slogan before they changed it?
Do no evil.
Do no evil.
And they were like, actually, let's do it. They're like, let's do it, and let's kick CannaGather out of their home for 2.5 years.
Yeah, there's
Google.
But I think that's what we're all coming together on this, and I think what is a really important thing for us all to know is how big potentially the marketplace is in adult use. I mean, we're talking about, we think we know there's 100,000 registered patients in New York right now, and there's 65,000 or so that we think are active. There's 10 companies that are doing it. It's not a large kind of commercial base. I think that when we're looking in the future, and there's 40 dispensaries amongst the medical cannabis operators. Now, the governor's office has been talking about numbers like somewhere between 600 and 800 dispensaries. And certainly, I think that the medical cannabis operators have a role to play in that. But it's a role to play. I think we also have a role to play as we've made offers and have been working with a number of organizations to be a driver of helping these other businesses through incubation, through access to capital, which is a real important one. Can I just take a moment and say, I'm glad to talk about SAFE Act, too, and even STATES Act and other things. But these things are critical to actually making sure that when we talk about a social equity program in New York, that's successful, because the number one reason that the companies that have gotten into cannabis have done is because they have had access to capital, for their own private capital or from their friends and family to be able to raise that capital. Well, that next generation of entrepreneur, potentially it's a social equity applicants in New York State, or whether it's in Illinois, which is just about to do it, they need that access to capital. They need some level of federal normalization to be able to compete on that scale. And then we're off to the races. So I think the message that we have is that it's a big pie. That's going to be there. We think certainly as the medical operators, we're licensed healthcare providers in the state of New York. Our mission is to help people, and what we know is that in adult use, there's going to be more people to help, and we think that there's a role to play in certainly pharmacist-led care, and that being a component of what an adult use, framework is here. But we've been working with Drug Policy Alliance, with NORML, with Minority Cannabis Business Association, and others, to really kind of show people that this industry is going to be big, it's going to be broad, it's going to be diverse, and I don't think it's zero-sum game. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Do you envision your organization or the member organizations getting actively involved, either financially, operationally, or otherwise, in supporting those social equity applicants as they're getting their businesses off the ground?
Sure. I mean, I think a number of us spent a lot of time in Illinois on their adult use bill, and each state's going to do it a little bit different, and hopefully each state makes it slightly better. We think Illinois was a really great example of how everyone can kind of win together. I think at the end there was industry, there were social equity advocates, there were state policymakers that were interested in kind of doing this best right, that all kind of locked hands at the end and declared victory. And I think that's what's I think that's what's possible here. But one of the key components there was how existing industry can be helpful in making low and no interest loans to the next, the next group of dispensaries to come. Illinois is going to have a new round of dispensary licenses, and I think it's going to open in a couple of weeks. And it's going to be a round that if you are not a social equity applicant, you can apply, but you're not going to win. I mean, we think that's great. I think it's fantastic. And I think there's no reason we can't do that in New York, right?
Yeah, and there's also a discount, the application process, which is great. Yeah, I mean, as you were alluding to, is like different states do it differently. And I'll be more candid, is like, states have tried to do it and they have not succeeded. So it seems like Illinois' model is very promising. So
very promising, and there has been a reason that some of these others haven't. I think Massachusetts had difficulties. I don't think that they really addressed this from the beginning. A place like Colorado, and I think that's why it's so important that we do it right, and everyone's at the table and ready to make sure that this works, and I think everyone wants this to work. Colorado, the cake's baked a little bit, and I don't think that we can lose that chance also at the same time at making sure that, just like Illinois has done, I think it's going to be a really great program. I think we're going to look back in a few years, and we're going to see what worked in it, what didn't work, and so forth. But I think what we all know is that we can't wait. We can't wait for changes to the medical cannabis program. We can't wait for normalization of cannabis in New York on the national level. We can't wait for the Safe Banking Act any longer. I was with last night with a group of a large group at dinner of minority cannabis entrepreneurs, many of whom have got multi-state businesses, some of whom are physicians actually. That are working in this, and a lot of other kind of entrepreneurs, and I think what's interesting from their perspective too, and I can pass along what others have been saying to me on this, speak for them, but just that the very people that they're ready, they need that help right now. They're in business. They need that access to the capital. They need that ability to get better banking relationships now.
totally makes sense. Did you have any more slides in the deck, or should we open it up to...
I think that's it. Maybe a little
any
Q&A.
more? Yeah, sure, let's do it. Any questions for Adam, chair of the... Well, first of all, round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing. Any questions for Adam Goers? All the way in the back.
Well, it's like kind of more of a statement, but I'm a cannabis doctor, and I work in a Hasidic Orthodox Jewish community. Wow. When I started a few months ago, people thought I was kind of crazy. They thought I was funny. But if you take it seriously, they take it seriously too. Yeah. It's really, really wanted in the community. And it's cool that Sativa's opening up and Columbia Care and all these different things. But you're absolutely right that when it comes to Percocets and oxycodones, it's free basically for the patient versus getting cannabis $50, $60. So I'm really happy that you guys are trying to work with insurance companies and trying to get reimbursements. I think that's amazing, and I'm really excited.
L'chaim. Right there.
What could a minority-owned business, how could they work with you right now? What exactly is it that they're doing?
Question is, what could a minority-owned business do to collaborate with you?
Well, number one, and I think Paul, who helps run the association, is here, and we'd love to get your card and talk to you. But one of the things that we've put out there, are two different initiatives that we did during the last legislative session that we'll be reamping up right now. One is collecting resumes of people that want to work in the business, because we know a lot of people that are hiring and they want to get in. But two is also inviting, and I guess this is something we're still working on, right, Paul, on the submitting business plans of people that want to get into the business and how we can help incubate them. People make a lot of mistakes along the way. We certainly made them. I think there's a lot that can be learned through education. So something that we haven't done yet here in New York, but maybe is appropriate to this question too, is the type of training that we've done in a number of different community colleges of people that are looking to get involved in the business, either ancillary or become a licensee. And then the other one is to stay in close touch with us, because when the licensing application rounds come out for whether it's the registered organization or whether it's eventually an adult use, is we want to make sure that the industry succeeds. And so teaming you up and pairing you up with people that have capital that want, or maybe you already have capital that you want to deploy in this. But I think there's a lot of opportunities, and something that we've been trying to do as an association is kind of connect people. So follow up with us, and we'd love to have you part of that group.
First step Raise your hand if you are interested in getting involved in the legal adult use cannabis industry. So that's awesome. And if you're interested in doing that, you know how you can do it? You can go to Albany and you can come to Long Island and you can get involved because it's not going to happen without that first, unfortunately. But thank you for offering your services on that front. Any more questions for Adam? Right there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Steve. I'm an MS patient. I've been suffering from MS for the last 9 years. I've been using medical marijuana strains and CBD oil to treat the different symptoms of my disease. Is there any push from the industry to have the state expand the different types of product available? My complaint has always been they do a Merlot, which defeats any individual strain powers there might be, because I've done 2 years of research mixing THC strains of different specific plant with CBD oil in different percentages that help different symptoms of MS, different times of the day, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's been my only complaint. The painkillers are great, saved me when I had my shoulder replaced, but the product availability of the Merlot mix by percentage is kind of not that progressive.
Yeah, no, it's, thank you for that question. And I think it goes to what we were saying before, the market size is it's so small right now. One, the state dictates, I went to a panel maybe a year or so ago, and it hurt me because there were applause for somebody on the panel that said, and to the medical cannabis companies in New York who aren't selling us the products that we want and charging too much money for them, and then they said something mean about us, and they got a lot of applause. And I said, well, the state tells us what products we can make and tells us and approves our pricing. So we're in this kind of situation where we're trying, and that's where I think, Josh, I mean, like, we need everybody's advocacy in Albany to say we need changes, and we want to help lead that. But to the kind of product, formats, I think, you'll see, I think every, 3-4 months, we're releasing a new product category that's kind of coming out. And it's slower than we want it to be. And one of them is that there aren't enough customers, to bring it back to this. And I think as you get into different states and when the market sizes up, there's just an ability of companies to kind of, expand beyond kind of the formulations that we're currently working on. So. Sure. Yeah, and get your THC. Yeah. Here. Yeah, absolutely. We're with you, and we hear you loud and clear, and just hope you know we're fighting on that. We want to be able to serve you better.
Yeah, everyone gives the ROs such a hard time, and it's like, it's not, you're telling them, it's like we go back to the magic wand, but did you have anything you wanted to add about the magic wand? Anything you'd like to change in particular about
the magic wand? I mean, I think it's pretty simple. I think they should expand the number of dispensaries that are in here for the ROs, bring in 5 new licensees, we think, across the state, get to a point where maybe we have 1 dispensary at the very least. Now we're kind of negotiating with the state, 1 dispensary for every 50,000 people within the state, 100,000. I mean, we think the more, obviously, the better. We've seen that in a place like Florida and in Oklahoma, where they have a large number of dispensaries, means a large number of registered patients, and that means that people are getting the medicine they need. So I think it's pretty simple. There was a bill this last legislative session that didn't quite make it over in the 11th hour. That would have done a lot of those things, but we also know that the governor has his prerogative as the regulator to make big changes, and some of the things I just mentioned with the magic wand he could do.
So, Governor Cuomo, if you're watching, one last question, and then we'll. Are you going to be around for the
absolutely.
happy hour?
Look forward to having a drink with everyone.
Great. Okay. I don't know. I can just come. We're experimenting today.
So I have diabetic neuropathy in my leg. I actually had a stroke. So I also have nerve damage in my hand. So I talked to my doctor, which is at Columbia Presbyterian, and I said, hey, do you prescribe? And she said, no, but we're going to find you a doctor that does. And I'm like, wow, now I got to go through the process of talking to her, then I got to explain it to another doctor, what they're reading, all the stuff that they're reading. Maybe some of that stuff that I'm experiencing is not on that document. Do I have to go through, so if I get the license, I like that the medical part of it is, because literally, I have a bag full of pills. I just took one while we were having one. And I like to quit that, but then also I like to pair that with nutrition. So being able to, have olive oil, something that you're cooking with, just to boost up the nutrition and not always take, kind of switch off. I don't know if that's possible. Are you guys thinking about that?
Well, one, I guess I was almost saying I was glad that your doctor told you that they'd find you another doctor, because a lot of times they say no, and I'm not gonna. I mean, I went to my doctor, and they said no way, we wouldn't possibly do that, and I was like, well, no way am I gonna keep seeing you.
Right, exactly.
So I guess I just, knowing how tough the process can be, I'm glad that they got you with someone. I think to the question, I can talk to you about offline here a lot on experiences that I've had personally, but also a lot of others on how to kind of treat. But I think what you're getting at is the right mentality of, we hear stories out of patients that have a bag full of pills, and over the course of time with getting treatment and regularly visiting their physician, they're down to like one prescription drug or two or something like that from having a big thing. And as somebody who has neuropathic pain, which is a little different than neuropathy, but in a similar vein, I feel you, and I know how difficult it can be, and I'm just thankful for you that you're looking at this as an option. So
Yeah, I'm tired of popping pills.
yeah, I feel you. Yes.
I guess we're doing.
We got one more.
One more question.
Hi, I just want to make a comment to address what you said about nutrition. So, cannabis is a plant. I'm a dietitian trained in functional medicine, and I also work in cannabis. My name is Laura Logano. And, cannabis, I really don't like when it's referred to as a drug. It's a plant. And there's such a thing as plant medicine and plant health. And all of these chronic diseases that we're talking about, the two people who got up, thank you so much, diabetes and MS, can be managed with lifestyle habits. And as you mentioned, nutrition and, of course, cannabis. So I think if we address cannabis as leading the pack for personalized lifestyle medicine, we will win.
Yeah, and I guess thank you for that. And I think that's an important one too. Is when we talk about it being in New York, for instance, pharmaceutical quality, it's a whole plant extract, and I take it that we're not replacing one drug with another. This is totally something different. So, thank you.
Cool. Thank you. I'm Goers, MCIA. And we'll be around. We have another half hour at the cafe, and then Ribalta. We got some free pizza. Thank you all. Round of applause for all of you for coming out today. Thank you. October 22nd with Senator Kruger.